For another edition of SJHL Insider. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jeromy Corrigan, Media Manager of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. And as always, SJHL Insider, our podcast, is presented by SGI. But lots of great sponsors that support the program here at SJHL Insider and both SJHL Weekly. Lots of sponsors. Chevrolet, Capital Auto Mall, Great Western, Cantera Seeds, RBC, SaskTel, SGEU, Direct West, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, Tourism Saskatchewan, and Young's Equipment. Thank you so much for your support. All the great sponsors you can see on our screen, and the support that they provide allows us to have these great shows each and every week. On today's show, not only will myself and Clark Monroe break down the SJHL. There he is. Hello, Clark. How are we doing today?
Doing well. Exciting week as always, and lots to talk about.
And we will be joined later on in the show by the governor for the Kindersley Klippers, Kyle Adamson. A little bit different on the show today. Usually we've chatted with play-by-play guys, but now our first chat with a governor. Really excited to chat with Kyle because he knows the game of hockey very well. He's very involved with the Kindersley Klippers, obviously being their governor, but also doing many things with the Klippers during the season. And obviously a big voice when it comes to the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. So we'll be joined by Kyle later on in the show, but we do have some topics to get to before then.
Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to get into our weekly edition of The Hat Trick.
Yes. One day I'm going to throw an actual hat while you do that.
We should get some peanut gallery folks to come in and just throw hats at us during that announcement.
We can arrange that. Maybe that'll be your Christmas present this year.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
All right, so the first one, as we always do, we look back at the last couple of days in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. So let's have a look back at Tuesday, the results from that night. Obviously, L'Orange taking on Kindersley. What do you have, Jer?
I mean, the score kind of shows what it was. It was a 7-3 win for the L'Orange Ice Wolves, actually, but it was L'Orange with a 1-0 lead after 20 minutes of play. Each team found the back of the net 3 times in the middle frame, and then L'Orange kind of took over in the third period and walked away with the 7-3 win. Then on Wednesday, 3 more games on the schedule, and it was a rematch between Kindersley and L'Orange. L'Orange picking up the 4-1 win. Estevan continuing to play very well at Affinity Place, a 5-3 win over the Melville Millionaires. And the Humboldt Broncos snapping their 3-game losing streak with a 4-1 win over the Notre Dame Hounds. Maybe let's start with L'Orange. 2 big wins middle of the week. We talked about it on SJHL Weekly. 4 games in 5 nights, all at home. Parents' week for the Ice Wolves. And they've started it off 2-0, playing some pretty good hockey.
Yeah, I think I texted you on Tuesday night and said L'Orange put on a show. I mean, again, like you said, Parents' Week, a great week for that to happen. Right. Trenton Curtis with a hat trick in that Tuesday night game. So, a great start to their week as they have a little bit more coming up, and we'll talk about that later in the show, of course. It's a big week for L'Orange. I think we talked about this last week on this show, right. That L'Orange has a really good opportunity to maybe, push their way up to the top of the Sherwood division. So, this is a big week for them and a great start to that week, getting 4 points in 2 games.
Yeah, don't want to give away what one of the topics is for the hat trick.
We'll get there.
With what you said. But Topher Chirico played very well in that. Same with Dawson Smith. We talked with Mr. Kaminsky about that earlier on SJHL Weekly, the fact that they have a great 1-2 punch in between the pipes. Estevan with a 5-3 win over the Melville Millionaires. They continue to play some really good hockey as of late. Yeah,
and you mentioned it, their home record. I think there were some people on Twitter pointing out how well they're playing at home this year. 8-3 at home this year in 11 games, with a goal differential of +17 at home. So they're showing their fans a good time when people get down to Affinity Place in Estevan. And, it's good because home records are so important in this league. You have to take advantage of it when you can. They've had a couple of games. I know last week, they played 3-3. We talked about that at length against some good teams as well. So they're continuing that trend, and it's a good way to sell tickets when you win at home. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've always said in Junior A hockey, I think It's even for the teams that are at the bottom of the standings. I think it's easy, or obviously it's much easier to win at home. Teams below 500 can be a 500 or above 500 teams at home. It's the teams that separate themselves from being a top team to a bottom team are the teams that can win on the road, and that's kind of where you can kind of separate yourself for sure. When it comes to the Melville Millionaires, you know, they've been, I would say, I don't think it's out of the realm to say they've been struggling as of late. They've now lost 4 in a row. They're 2-8 in their last 10. They're not really getting that secondary scoring. I know we had talked about when it comes to the Melville Millionaires, you know, Noah Wills and Zach Kane continue to, they each had 2 points last night, but they just can't get it. It seems like they just can't get it over the top, because we saw that game last week against Notre Dame just falling short, and they just fell short against a very good Estevan team.
I'm starting to think a little bit too, like you mentioned we saw them live, and they have a lot of good pieces there. They really do. Like I really, you know, they played really well. I mean, several guys on that team, not named Zach Kane or Noah Wills, did stand out on that game against Notre Dame 100%. Last week for me. It was one of my first games seeing Melville, so keep that in mind. But I really think maybe it's just getting to a point where maybe some of it's puck luck, maybe some of it's, you know, bounces here and there, and maybe it'll turn around. And you never know. Something could spark them, and it could just, you know, flip a switch in that locker room. That happens all the time in the SJHL over the years, where a team might get off. Like, they've played 20 games now. You know, they're, what is it now, a third almost of the way into the season, but there's still lots of time left. Something can still absolutely switch, and they're not that far off from, you know, jumping up a little bit.
Well, again, you got to stop.
Yes.
You just got to stop. You're going to spoil one of the hat trick points.
Perfect.
But, before we get to the next point, though, quickly, a bounce back win for the Humboldt Broncos. They go home, and that's exactly it. A place they played some really good hockey. They pick up a 4-1 win over Notre Dame.
Yeah, you know, home cooking and maybe a little bit of getting healthy too. I know that we heard some things about maybe there was a bit of a bug going around. I don't know the exact details, so I won't speculate what it was or wasn't.
Good.
But you know, I think getting a couple guys back into the lineup. Sure. I know they were but they had some APs in the lineup the last few games as well. So maybe getting some more veteran players back, and that team is so strong. I mean, I didn't expect that losing streak of theirs, whatever it was, to continue too long.
It was only 3 games. It was just,
games.
I think what it stood out was the fact that they went down south for 3 games and 3 nights, and they didn't get a point. And I think that's why it stood out for a lot of people.
Right, absolutely. And so getting back home, playing a Notre Dame team, let's be honest, who's been playing pretty good lately. They've been moving up the power rankings a little bit the last couple weeks.
Well, they've been up and down.
Yeah.
It seems like they'll have a really good week, and then they'll struggle. I think last week was a good example of kind of where they've been lately. They beat the Melville Millionaires, and then a tough loss to the Yorkton Terriers.
Yeah.
So they continue. We talked to Nugsy about it, but the Notre Dame Hounds continue to they're at the bottom of the league when it comes to goals for, and they're looking to try and get some more offense, and that'll eventually come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yes, and one place where offense comes is the back end, and they do have one player that's in the top 10, but that's a very good second point.
Yeah, so let's get to point number 2 of the hat trick, and that is the top scoring defenseman in the league. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and there has been some changes since then. So let's have a look at it here now. I guess, Jer, we talk about diversity in these types of lists all the time. A good mix in there, but what stands out for you?
Well, I think the first thing that jumps out is the fact that when you look at this list, you have a lot of the top teams in the league represented. You see 2 players from Battleford, 2 from Estevan, 2 from Humboldt, someone from Flin Flon. Yeah. The top teams are well represented, and that just shows, obviously, if you can generate offense from the blue line, you're going to have a lot of success in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. There's a lot of talented blue liners. Last time we talked about the top 10 defensemen in scoring, we touched on it's not just the 10 players that are on this list. There are so many talented players in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League when it comes to defensemen and point production. When you go on the SJHL websites and you look at not just the top 10 defensemen, you look at top 20. The entire top 20 in SJHL scoring right now all are in double-digit points already this season, which is unbelievable. Guys, if you can pull up actually the scoring one more time, thank you. There's also not on this board is Xander Stewart of the Nipawin Hawks, who is also tied with 13 points with Leith Olafson and Reese Richmond. But when you look at this list, there's a lot of very talented defensemen when it comes to the top 10 scoring. And I think there's an argument for a lot of these players, you could argue, being, the top defenseman in the SJHL.
Oh, yeah.
I know I've seen some debates on Twitter for sure.
Yeah.
Not involving me. I will not say that. But
Not yet.
Not yet. There has definitely been some debates on Twitter about who might be the best defenseman in the SJHL. Here's what I'll say. There's just a lot of good defensemen.
Yeah.
Why do we need to pick one that's just the best?
Yeah.
Let's celebrate them all. There's a lot of good defensemen in this league.
Yeah, that's not an easy debate right now.
No.
And points don't even
my
tell the whole
thought is
story
I just
either,
don't want to debate it.
Yeah, exactly. And you see, like you mentioned, like how good the top 20 is in terms of point production specifically. And I see a name like we saw Colby Ball for Melville play at Notre Dame. He played a big role for that team.
He's been very good for them this year.
He's been very good.
Yeah.
So he's playing a good role. Hayden Tuba for Melford. He's not on that list. He was, he's been in the discussion for Defenseman of the Week several times.
Yep.
Sam Kroon for Notre Dame. He plays another big role. So
there's a bunch.
So many guys, and that top 10 list. It's always fun to look at. I love stats.
Yeah.
But it goes deeper than that. So that's another great part of the league.
Yeah, and same with the player stats that we touched on last week.
Yeah.
We try to look at these every month, and we definitely see. I think it just speaks to the talent in the league that you're seeing players jump up and down, and you're seeing a bunch of different players in the top 10 when it comes to both players, defensemen, rookies, goalies. The other thing we didn't even mention on that list is you see a rookie in Carson Cater, 16-year-old defenseman. Rookie season with the Humboldt Broncos. He's been Direct West Rookie of the Week twice so far, and he's in the top 10 scoring. So it just speaks to how good the variety in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League when it comes to the defensemen and the talent that the league has.
And last thing on Cater too, I think every time we talk about Cater and how well he's doing, I think back to the first episode of SJHL Weekly earlier this year, or maybe it was the second one, where Rory McGoran basically said how good of a fit it is for him there because he plays such a good role, and you just keep seeing it night after night. He's playing a big part of that team. So let's get to topic number 3, and that topic, of course, is now that we've talked about it a few times.
Well, you teased it a few times.
The SJHL standings. This is the league standings, top to bottom, 1 through 12.
As of going into tonight, Thursday, November 10th.
Yeah,
Thursday, November 10th.
So there you go. So this is there is some games on the docket tonight that might change these a little bit.
Just one.
Just the one. And we'll get to that later. But as you look at this list, obviously we see Battleford's win streak is currently their record.
Well, they have an overtime loss and a shootout loss.
Yeah, if you count those losses in there. On the website, it shows streak 17-0-1-1. So that's where I go with that. But outside of that, we've seen a little bit of movement in the last couple of weeks since we last looked at the standings. So Jeromy, what stands out to you with this?
Well, we were talking about it on SJHL Weekly with Rory McGoran and Jamie Neugenbauer, and we were talking about the standings, and we didn't actually have a physical look of it like we do right now. But you can kind of see, and especially after the 2 wins by the Larange Ice Wolves this week, you can kind of see now there's almost 2 tiers.
Right.
There's a little bit of separation now that we've been kind of waiting for, and we're finally getting it. You can kind of see those top 5 are right in the mix with one another. And then between 5 and 6, there is a bit of a gap now.
Right.
And it's going to be, as of right now, you're seeing 2 groupings of teams, the top 5 and then 6 through 12. And I think you look at 6 through 12, any of those teams can easily make the playoffs. First off, we're not even 2 months into the season.
Yeah.
But secondly, you see those top 5 teams, and then 2 through 5, I do believe it was only separated by 2 points.
Yeah.
The tricky thing is, though, when you look at standings at this time of the year, though that's really tricky, is each team has played different amounts of games.
Best example of that is Flin Flon at 3. They're 3rd place in the league. They've played 17. Estevan's in 4th. They played 24.
Exactly.
7 games difference at this point. So, yeah, that's a big... And then you look at the bottom of the standings, and we're going to talk about the Kindersley Klippers in a minute. They've played 16, the lowest in league, with Yorkton, also played only 16. So they have a lot of games to make up. So there's a lot of movement incoming potentially. Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is, the teams that have played the least amount of games, it's about taking advantage of your games in hand and making up those points to catch up. It's never easy to play catch up in standings in any league, but if you have those games in hand, you really have to take advantage of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's some strategy involved in that as well, in terms of how do you approach maybe a player acquisition down the road? If you have extra games, does it entice you to maybe, you know, bolster your lineup a little bit and see if you can, like you said, take advantage of those extra games that you have still left on the schedule? So that's all going to play out in the next little bit. And I love seeing those battles come into play. Yeah,
it's you know, it blows my mind that we're already talking about standings and stuff like that and things to look out for and whatnot. But that speaks to the parity of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. Now, one team who was definitely off for a little bit, I think 13 days to be exact, but took to the ice this week for 2 games already, was the Kindersley Klippers. And as a result, we are now pleased to be joined by Governor of the Kindersley Klippers, Mr. Kyle Adamson. Kyle, how are we doing today?
Busy, but pretty good. How are you?
About the same. Busy, but excited to talk hockey as always. I guess first and foremost, Kyle, you know, tough 2 losses for the Kindersley Klippers up in La Ronge against the Ice Wolves, coming off a stretch where you guys have 13 days off. What did you make of the hockey games up in La Ronge Tuesday and Wednesday?
Well, I kind of thought Tuesday was... you know, we got a little bit of bus legs, plus a little bit of a workout in PA, having to push the bus out.
Right.
So I thought we kind of looked like a team that had traveled for 6-7 hours to get up there come the third period. We were right in it until, you know, 1 minute and 3 left in the second. Last night, I didn't think that we had a bad effort. We started guns a-blazing, come out firing, and, you know, another great performance from Cody Jamin, but just not enough to get the job done during a big week in La Ronge for them.
When you look at, I guess, the start of the year for the Klippers, I know at the beginning of the season and talking to head coach and GM Ken Plaquin, I know at the showcase we had talked about, you know, the Klippers had been in so many games and then they finally get that win over Yorkton, but then they have a lengthy stretch off and then they struggle for a bit, win a couple games, and then have a lengthy stretch off. What have you made of the start of the season for the Klippers?
Yeah, I thought it was obviously a slower start than what we wanted, but we've been in a lot of games, losing some 1-goal games early in the year. I mean, our home opener against Battleford was a thriller. You know, we were in it. You finally get the first win. You hope to be able to carry that momentum. The schedule kind of plays a little bit into it where we have to take a long stretch. And then right before this last break, the boys were buzzing and they were flying and picking up points and then again, we get hit with another long stretch. So it has pros and cons, obviously. We get some guys back from injuries. We get some opportunities for some other guys to come in, a couple of new guys that get a little more acclimated. But, you know, it is what it is. We're not going to use any excuses. We made the schedule, and that's what we're going to roll with. But we got a busy time coming up here. Obviously, we're way behind the games played. So let's get a little momentum going and keep it rolling.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit, Kyle, then. I guess you touched on the schedule and you guys made the schedule. Was that by design to have 2 stretches of more than 10 days off, or how did that kind of come about?
Well, I think not having the Anavet Cup this year, we extended the season a little bit just to allow kind of a happy medium between the end of the championship series and the Centennial Cup this year. So we get a little bit longer stretch. You know, you'd like to play some more games in there, but it kind of just is what it is. Got some bunch together, and, you know, we're going to have a long break at Christmas time too. So it has pros and cons, obviously, but with the amount of games that we play and the amount of time that we have, it's just one of those things. Every team's going to go through it at some point this year.
For sure. You guys have been, you touched on it, have played the least amount of games in the SJHL so far this season, but who have been some standouts for the Klippers so far this year that have really caught your eye and have played well for the team?
Well, I mean, obviously you got to start with our goaltenders. Right. Losing Matt Pacenti after last season and obviously Pacenti from Justin Close. We've been pretty fortunate throughout the years with our goaltending in Kindersley, and, you know, you were a little bit concerned about it coming into the season with no veteran goaltenders, but holy schmoly, Logan Falk and Cody Noodles Jamin have been unbelievable. Great kids. They're best friends. It's comical to watch them together. They meld really well. And they're always rooting for each other. So that's a huge bonus. Liam Bell on the point has been absolutely lights out. Same with, obviously, Braden Cook, Cookie, our captain there. He's been playing really well. And we have the Poplawski brothers coming in from way in the offseason. They've been absolutely excellent. It's amazing how somebody can just have that instant chemistry with each other. Obviously, being twin brothers probably helps a little bit. But, no, it's been okay. We're right there. I think we have a great team. We've got a great future. We're going to string some wins together now and chisel our way into the playoffs.
And it also helps when you have a goalie that can score a goal for himself, like we saw on Alumni Weekend. It was pretty exciting, hey?
Well, and we had a couple of rough games in the score column, so yeah, it was pretty impressive. A couple of shutouts against us, and then all of a sudden, even our goalie scored in one game. So that was pretty darn cool.
Yeah, it was funny when you went 3 games without scoring a goal, and then it seemed like everything clicked that night, and even Cody Jamin found the back of the net. Kyle, we mentioned obviously when we started this interview, you are the governor for the Kindersley Klippers. Maybe for the fans at home that don't know fully, maybe just explain what a governor actually does with their team.
So in terms of what I do for the Junior Klippers, I take everything basically to the league. I deal with Kyle McIntyre a whole lot on everything from business side to recruitment stuff to, whatever we need to have the league involved with. Obviously, it was a very big off season for us with a whole lot of new everything, including yourself and Jacob and Kyle. So that's kind of my other role. I'm also the chairman of the board for the SJ. So it's busy,
right?
But it is a lot of fun. It's dealing with the business side of things because whether we like to admit it or not, our hockey club is a business still. Mm-hmm. We need to produce profits in order to keep our team alive. So it's challenging, but it is a lot of fun, and it's great to know we have 12 teams pulling in the same direction right now.
For sure. What about being the chairman, like you kind of mentioned? What kind of different responsibilities does that possess, I guess, for you?
So throughout the summer, obviously, we had our hiring committee that we formed after Bill let us know that he wasn't going to be returning for the season. So we formed a hiring committee. Being the chairman, I was kind of the lead on that. We bring everybody together. We did a bunch of interviews. Obviously, we come up with Mac as our choice. So then it kind of got turned over to me where I'm communicating back with our governors of, hey, this is where we're at in contract negotiations. This is what he wants to see. This is what we want to see, relaying back and forth. And then throughout everything else, staying in touch with the other governors and making sure that there's nothing that I can help with or should be helping with, obviously from the business side of everything and having to deal with the league. Sometimes you have to bring stuff up to the commissioner or, to the rest of the staff in terms of maybe some issues that other teams are having. But for the most part, right now, this time of year, it's more we get to sit back and just let you guys kind of do your thing. And, we have goals, we have objectives, we have a vision. And, we're just sitting back enjoying it and watching the seed grow, basically.
For sure. I guess, you know what, we've kind of talked about all your kind of different roles, being a governor, chairman of the SJHL, but you are a man that wears many hats, and this also includes doing music and PA announcing for the Kindersley Klippers. First off, how did that kind of fall into your lap? And then how much fun are you doing, or how much fun are you having doing those two roles? Because when I went to Kindersley, first off, great music selection. Secondly, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun doing the PA announcing.
Yeah, so it actually started 4 or 5 seasons ago. We had our local radio guys that were doing it, and both of them were away. So we had our marketing guy, Tyler Orr, doing the PA announcing one game, and I was across the ice and shot him a text and said, like, what are you doing, man? You can't be doing everything. I'm coming up. So I walked up there and kind of pushed him out of his chair, and next thing I know, I'm doing every single game. Also, we don't have a volunteer to do the music anymore, so I'm doing that too. So it's really enjoyable. I have a lot of fun, maybe sometimes too much fun doing it, but I like to do my best to keep everybody engaged and make guys laugh. We do some goofy stuff, and we have some great sponsors that have some great ad reads, and it's a lot of fun. Sometimes my wife is a little embarrassed by me, but she'll get over it.
Yes, I'm pretty sure she'll get over it for sure. Well, Kyle, we really appreciate you taking some time today to chat some hockey and kind of give us some insight for some of your roles that you do with the league, and continue the great work with the Kindersley Klippers. And we really appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you guys having me. And just before I go, just like to give a little shout out to my 8-year-old son. He's currently in the Jim Patteson's Children's Hospital right now, awaiting surgery for his meniscus.
Oh boy!
So Mama Bear's in there with him, and I have our daughter at home with no school. So we're a busy family, but we'll see you in a few hours, Bear. Good luck, buddy.
There you go. Good luck, Bear, for sure. Thanks so much, Kyle. We really appreciate it. All right, that is the governor of the Kindersley Klippers, Mr. Kyle Adamson. Always great catching up with Kyle. Very well spoken. Like I mentioned in the interview, Clark, a man who wears many, many, many hats.
Yeah.
Actually, all those hats from the hat trick graphic are his.
They're all his.
They're all Kyle's.
No wonder there's so many.
There's a lot of them.
And just for me, like hearing that as a person with a lot of game day experience myself, and both the SJ and other league as well, that's a lot of work. Like that's kudos to Kyle for being able to do that, first of all, and handling it on a nightly basis. That's unreal. And
taking the time to chat with us today on, by the sounds of it, a very busy time for his family. Wow. Best of luck to his son in his surgery for his meniscus. Our thoughts and prayers are with him for a successful surgery. But a great chat with Kyle, chatting with him at the Board of Governors meeting from a couple of weeks ago. And it's always great chatting hockey with him. And it provides a different perspective that we haven't had yet on this show, just with what a governor does, because I don't think the average fan knows exactly what a governor might do to not only help the league, or not the team that they're with, but also the league. Yeah, and having been a part of board meetings in the past as well with Estevan back in the day, and knowing how important the communication lines are, they do play a big role, and it's an big important role because 100%. Decisions get made on a month by month basis sometimes in the league, and rules change in the off season, and they talk about a lot of really important topics, and they are really the heartbeat that keep the league kind of going in a positive direction. So good to see. Yeah. And hopefully, like Kyle mentioned, the Kindersley Klippers, tough 2 games to start their following their 13 days off, but they'll be back on the ice this weekend, looking to try and get back in the win column. And like he kind of touched on, there has been, I feel like when we've talked about the Klippers this year, we've talked about the fact that they've played the least amount of games in the SJHL, but there is lots of positives coming out of Kindersley. It's more or less just coming together and actually playing a full 60 and getting the 2 points. Yeah, like honestly, just let's get them back on the ice for a big stretch here, because like he said, there's going to be some stretches where they do have lots of games going forward. So, seeing some of those guys come together, where they have a ton of great players on that roster. You mentioned a bunch of them. Their goaltending has really been great this year. Great 1-2 punch in that. Solid. So like, let's see that keep rolling. And, they're getting some contributions. They're one of those teams where you look at their numbers, like just on their top to bottom stats, it's spread out. They distribute the numbers pretty well across the team. And you see guys like Logan Cox scored a couple goals the other night. So they are getting some great performances from certain guys. So it's just like, let's get them on the ice a little bit more often. Yep, let's go. Sure. They played the least amount of games in the SJHL, and they're going to be a lot busier in the next couple of weeks. I think I saw at the end of November, they actually have to go on probably one of the toughest trips I've actually ever seen in junior hockey when it comes to a road trip where they have to play 5 games in 6 days out on the road. Now, travel-wise, once they get into the area, it's not that bad, but there will be some stretches in the coming months, or in the coming weeks, I should say, for the Klippers, where they're going to play a lot of hockey in a short period of time, to say the least. 9 games on the docket to close out the week in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and it all kicks off, or continues, I guess, tonight with one matchup. The Yorkton Terriers visit the Flin Flon Bombers. Of course, Yorkton is coming off snapping that 6-game losing streak in Wilcox against the Hounds. They had that 4-2 win. Now trying to build some momentum. And I'm going to be honest, Yorkton plays 3 games in 3 nights, and it's got to be one of the toughest 3 games in 3 nights in the SJHL. You'll see what I mean. But Flin Flon returning to action at home at the Whitney Forum, always a very difficult place to play. Bombers looking to continue on with their winning ways. Moving on to Friday, 5 games on tap. Busy night. The Estevan Bruins will continue their lengthy homestand as they play host to the Melfort Mustangs. A big matchup in Melville between the Millionaires and the Hounds. Both teams looking to try and get a big 2 points and get back in the win column as well. The Nipawin Hawks play host to the Kindersley Klippers, who the Klippers wrap up their 3 games and 4-night road trip. Nipawin's won 2 in a row. They're looking to try and make it 3 in a row. Then there's that second meeting between Yorkton and Flin Flon, and then the battle for North Stars in Larange against the Ice Wolves. That should be a dandy between those 2 teams. Then finally on Saturday, just 3 games on the schedule. Yorkton will wrap up their 3 games in 3 nights road trip. Note the start time, 2:30 in the afternoon in Larange. It's because Larange is having their sportsman dinner Saturday evening. So the Ice Wolves will play.
That's a good strategy.
It's a very good strategy. I was a big fan of it when I saw it. But the Ice Wolves will play the Yorkton Terriers at 2:30. The second meeting between Melfort and Estevan, 7 o'clock at Affinity Place. And then the Nipawin Hawks will play host to the Battleford's North Stars for their, to, I guess, wrap up the weekend as Battleford plays 2 games on the road. When you look at, Clark, the next 3 days in the SJHL when it comes to games, what kind of stands out?
Yorkton playing 3-3 and 3 really tough. I mean, Flin Flon twice, I guess.
Tough rinks.
Yeah, I was going to say against 3 really tough opponents, but it's 2. Flin Flon twice and Larange. I mean, what a way to, after you get your win streak back, after that tough stretch that they had, going up against those 2 teams over a stretch of 3 days with that travel, that's a heavy task. Mm-hmm. However, if we can see Yorkton go in there and snag a few points, that's a big weekend for those guys.
Yeah, it would be.
I'm going to be keeping an eye on Yorkton just to see how they do over those few days. But yeah, I love that idea of the sportsman dinner. Like, why didn't I think of that back in the day? Like, that's awesome. I love that, Larange.
It's very smart. I mean, Larange is having their parents' week this week.
Yes.
And let's give a shout out where shout outs are definitely due. Unbelievable week of planning for the Ice Wolves.
Yeah.
You have 2 games against the Kindersley Klippers, Tuesday, Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Last night, after the game, they had a comedy show.
Ooh.
And then you play Friday.
Kelly Taylor there?
I do believe so, yes.
Kelly Taylor's a gem.
And then Friday nights, you play the Battle for North Stars. That's going to be great game. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, you wrap up. Now, that's 4 games in 5 days. That's definitely a lengthy stretch of hockey, all at the Mel, against the Yorkton Terriers, 2:30. But then you have your sportsman dinner after.
Yeah.
I mean.
And all the parents are there.
It's
a great way to celebrate the team.
Great way to celebrate the team. Great way to just celebrate hockey in Larange with the Ice Wolves. So whoever planned that, shout outs
very big shout out to
the Larange Ice Wolves, because that is a great week of hockey and a great week to really celebrate the team.
And Larange got onto a big TikTok account the other day. Shout out to the Hayhursts for getting that on there.
Yeah.
The one of their videos that they put on, I think it was their team TikTok. I'm not too sure where it was posted, but I think it was a couple weeks ago now too, because it looked like it was
actually, it was at, I believe it was at the beginning of the season.
Because it didn't look like many of the guys had the names on the jerseys yet. Usually that's a good sign that it's like a preseason, early season video.
Yeah.
And it got on NHL and ESPN's TikTok account the other day.
Amazing.
Huge. That's awesome. So much fun. And it was a great video too, by the way.
It was a great video. Before we finish giving the shout outs I feel like we're pumping the tires
This
on
is
Larange.
the Larange segment.
Yeah,
right
this
here.
is the Larange segment. We're pumping the tires. We also have to give a shout out to, you mentioned her, Megan Hayhurst, play-by-play voice of the Larange Ice Wolves. Every Wednesday, she will have a new episode of Women in the SJHL. The first episode was launched this Wednesday, yesterday. And you can find that on our YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. That's where you can find all of our features, segments, episodes, and like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. There's all the social media. I will probably plug it again, but that's a good way. So a big shout out to Megan for coming together, and I do believe there's like 12 or 13 episodes of this segment. So
a lot of great feedback.
A lot of great feedback,
Awesome
and going to be a great series that will honestly continue to go through the next couple of months, to say the least. When it comes to a game that stands out for you this weekend, which one?
Well, I hate to say it's the Battleford Larange because we just talked about Larange so much. That one does really stand out, though. And there's a lot on the line on that game, especially now. If we put some context on this, if we're looking, we just talked about Larange for like 5 straight minutes.
We did.
Sorry to everybody else, but just to look at some context with Larange's battle with Flin Flon in the Sherwood Division, we're going to see. Flin Flon played Yorkton twice this weekend.
Yeah.
And it, depending on the results of those games, that game against Battleford now becomes very important for Larange to kind of, it's a statement game.
Sure.
And if they can put out a good performance in that one, maybe sneak a point at least, maybe 2 points, of course. They're capable of it.
Of course.
That would be a huge boost to their fight in that division.
Any team can beat any team in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League on any given night. But yeah, obviously the Battleford North Stars 17-0-1-1 to start the season. It's been an incredible run so far. I would also say for me, I think it's a big weekend down in Estevan too.
Yes.
You touched on it. The Estevan Bruins have already played 24 games this season. They're going to play 2 more this weekend. That'll bring their total to 26 games played by November 12th. Like that's when you think about that in the grand scheme of things, like that's a lot of hockey in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And then they go up against the Melfort Mustangs, a team that I think they're going to be desperate for some points this weekend. They want to get back in the win column. They want to try and find some consistency in their game because they've definitely been up and down so far this season.
Yeah, 4-5-1 in their last 10 games, Melfort is. And again, like you said, I don't know if desperate is the right word exactly.
No,
but they're getting to that point where I think they want to start putting some results up. Yeah, they're the perfect word. They want to start putting some results up. Right. They had a lot of expectations, at least externally, by pundits, maybe on these broadcasts that us and SJHL Weekly, of course, sure. I'm referring to. A lot of people had Melfort pretty high up in their rankings,
right?
And they're currently 7-8-4. So I think they want to start putting up those results and getting that. I mean, Trevor Blevins, he's been in this league a long time. I think he has some internal expectations of his own.
1,000%.
So this could be a really interesting weekend for that team as a whole. Twice against Estevan on the road. We'll see. Let's see. I'll be keeping an eye on those ones for sure.
What I just want to mention with that before we move on to the next game. Melfort Estevan, they met earlier on this year with 2 games in Melfort.
Right.
And the Mustangs won both games in 2
right.
low-scoring, great goaltending matchups. So we'll see how that see if that's the style that comes through this weekend with those 2 teams, or if Estevan's able to break through, because they definitely have the offense to definitely do that for sure. Notre Dame and Melville. Both teams looking to I know Notre Dame's only lost 2 in a row, but Melville, 4-game losing streak, I mentioned earlier, 2-8 in their last 10. A very important game for the Mills at home. And
these 2 teams are separated by 2 points.
There you go.
So, I mean, this is a swing game in terms of that bottom. We talked about the tiers earlier in the show. now that there's a bit of separation at the
Right.
top, that bottom part, like every win right now, especially when you're playing a team that's right around you, is very important. It's almost like, you know, we talk about divisions.
I was just going to say,
4-point games.
I already knew. Yeah, we're on the same.
It's
same
almost like
wavelength.
now that the league is the way that it is in terms of the standings.
It's like the groupings. Yeah,
It's almost like every game that anywhere around you in the standings is a
divisional
4-point game.
Yep.
So that's going to be a big one. I love that you pointed that out because I was actually thinking about that as well. And with how good the game was that we saw last week between those two teams in Notre Dame, how is that going to translate now this week, going into this weekend? So I love it. Great
and on a
storyline.
smaller ice surface.
On a smaller, exactly.
For sure.
So how does that translate exactly? And it'll be, I'm going to, you know what, I've said I'm going to keep an eye on all these games. I'm just going to keep an eye on all the games because honestly, there's a lot of good ones this weekend and I'm excited for it.
Yes, I think there's a lot of intrigue.
A lot of,
when it comes
the
to
storylines are heavy.
When it comes to this week's matchup, even like let's go Kindersley Nipawin. I think, you know, Kindersley, obviously we touched on it with Kyle. You know, we're coming off of 13 days off. It's never easy.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about like the first time when they had 11 days off and they went up to Flin Flon, they got shut out 2 times, didn't play their best hockey. And then this time around, you have 13 days off. They didn't play, honestly. I watched the game on Tuesday. They were right in it. It was just a tough third period, but they were right in that hockey game.
Yeah.
And then same with last night's game. But for them, you know, playing 3 games in 4 nights on the road, and then you just touched on it, playing a team that's right around you in the standings, and because they've played the least amount of games in the league, they got to make up these games in hand, and you got to earn points.
Yeah. Yeah, and you said Nipawin's won 2 in a row, and Kindersley hasn't. They're 0-2-1, but again, it's been so long. So like, this is kind of one of those games, and I kind of talked about it earlier with Melville, kind of in a way that, you know, every once in a while there's a spark that happens, and I feel like Kindersley's a team that, with the way that their goaltending is, the way that their point distribution is in terms of scoring by committee. A spark for that team could go a huge way. And then if they get into a stretch of games that they're going to, because they have played the least amount, if they get a win here against Nipawin and that turns into the spark, the turning point kind of their season, this could be a big one for them. This could be really important.
Yeah, and you said like they are going to play a lot of hockey games in a short period of time, especially in the month of November. So getting off on the right foot, you know, you don't want to have a full week where you play 3 games and you're unable to get any points and make up those, like you touched on, those games in hand because they're so important. And of course, like you mentioned, these 2 teams are very close in the standings as well. At the end of the day, I think we've said it all year. It's going to be an incredible battle at the 6, 7, 8 area. For those final 2 or 3 playoff spots at the end of the year. And I don't think any team's going to be out of it. It's not going to be like last season where there were some teams well behind. It's going to be close the whole kind of way.
I think last week that Matt Barrett asked us via Twitter, I think, how many teams that are currently in the top 8 will finish up in the top 8. And I think I said 7. I'm throwing that out the window.
I don't even remember what I said, to be honest with you.
I think you might have said 6 or 7, but either way, like, it doesn't matter. I'm throwing that out the window. I love the logjam that's there right now, and I think that it's going to be a great battle.
Creates a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, the next few weeks to see how that kind of battle goes up and down and in and out. I think it's going to be really exciting to kind of see how that all plays out. So
and there's a couple of teams.
It starts this weekend.
It does, and there's a couple of teams that are also having the weekend off, which is good for rest. The Humboldt Broncos, they have the weekend off.
They could use it.
The Weyburn Red Wings have the week off, so it'll be interesting to see where the kind of standings lie after Saturday, because 9 big games on tap this week. Of course, you can stay up to date in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League and all the games this season through our social media. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is where you get to watch all the episodes of SJHL Insider, SJHL Weekly, all the features we do, the highlights we produce, Megan's Women in the SJHL features, and much, much more. It is free to subscribe, so subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also, if you would like to stay up to date with SJHL Weekly and SJHL Insider, subscribe to our podcast channel. Wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple or Spotify, just search SJHL Media, hit the subscribe button, and you'll get all the audio versions of these episodes right to your smart device.
Yeah, whenever you want.
Whenever you want.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going for a drive to one of the rinks.
You know what I love
Got a
is
pregame.
when you go for a walk with the dog. You know, you take your dog for a walk, you listen to something you missed out on,
Sure.
or check in on a podcast.
Sure.
So that's a good one too. Now the winter's coming along,
Yeah.
but still
really
gotta
want-
walk the dog. You know.
Well, dog owners.
Yeah.
I don't know. I unfortunately don't have a
You
dog.
can come over and walk my dog anytime. I've told you this.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Please do it.
I don't really want to.
Come on.
Not when it's this cold.
That's fair.
But also, once again, we got to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors for our shows in the SJHL, SJHL Weekly, SJHL Insiders. First off, our podcast sponsor, our audio podcast sponsor is SGI. Thank you so much for the podcast support and all these great sponsors you can see on the screen right now. Cantera Seeds, SaskTel, Capital Auto Mall, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, Chevrolet Direct West, Tourism Saskatchewan, SGI, SGEU, Great Western, Young's Equipment, RBC. The list goes
group.
on. And there's going to be more.
Yes, that's the goal.
Yes, that's the goal. But we thank you so much for your support, for everything you guys, all these sponsors do to help us put on the best shows, the SJHL Weekly, SJHL Insiders, and much, much more. And more projects that we have coming down the pipe that we are not going to speak to just yet. That is what we call, we've said it a few times on SJHL Insider, but that is what we call in the business a tease.
Almost a cliffhanger, almost.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the two, whatever you want to call it. But regardless, thank you for all your support, sponsorship-wise. It's going to be another great week of hockey. 9 games on schedule between Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So if you can, make it out to the rink to watch your local team. If not, you can catch all the games on Hockey TV. Be sure to subscribe. I do believe $29.99 a month. Definitely worth the value. And if not, you can catch all the highlights from all the games across the SJHL social media and SJHL YouTube. 9 games on tap this weekend. Going to be a great weekend of hockey. Thanks so much for joining us. And this has been another great episode of SJHL Insider. Enjoy the games this weekend, everyone.